Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabram Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Om Dhyanamoolam Guru Murti Pujamulam Guru Padam Mantramulam Guru Vakya Mokshamulam Guru Kripa Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shubham friends, today we will be talking about Lord Ram's reasons of his indifference towards life, what he told to Maharishi Vishwamitra and Guru Vasishtha. So Lord Ram is saying, boyhood has scarcely lost its boyishness when it is overtaken by youth, which is soon followed by a ruthless old age that devours the other two. Old age withers the body like frost freezing a lake of lilies. It drives away the beauty of the body like a storm does autumn clouds. It pulls down the body like a current carries away a tree from the bank. An old man with his limbs slackened and worn out by age, his body weakened by infirmity, is treated by woman as a useless beast. Old age drives away a man's good sense, just like a stepmother drives away a good wife. A man in tottering old age is ridiculed as an imbecile by his own sons and servants, and even by his wife, friends, and relations. When their appearance grows uncouth and their bodies become helpless and devoid of all manly qualities and power, then insatiable greed alights on the heads of the aged like a greedy vulture. Appetite, the constant companion of my youth, is thriving along with my age, accompanied with her evils of indigence and heart-burning cares and restlessness. Ah, me, what must I do to remove my present and future pains? This fear increases with old age and finds no remedy. What am I that I am brought to this extremity of senselessness? What can I do in this state? I must remain dumb and silent. Given these reflections, there is an increased sense of helplessness in old age. How and when, and what shall I eat, and what is sweet to taste? These are the thoughts that trouble the mind when old age comes. There is an insatiable desire for enjoyments, but the powers to enjoy them are lacking. It is lack of strength which afflicts the heart in old age. Hoary old age sits and shrieks like a heron on the top of the tree of this body, which is infested within by the serpents of sickness. As the grave owl, the bird of night, appears unexpectedly to our sight as the evening shades cover the landscape, so the solemn appearance of death overtakes us in the eve of our life. As darkness prevails over the world in the evening, so death overtakes the body at the eve of the life. Death overtakes a man in his hoary old age, just like a monkey alights on a tree covered with pearly flowers. Even a deserted city, a leafless tree, and parched upland may present a fair aspect, but never does the body look well that is pulled down by hoary age. Old age, with its whooping cough, lays hold of a man just as a vulture seize its prey with loud shrieks in order to devour it. As a girl eagerly lays hold of a lotus flower whenever she sees one, then plucks it from its stalk and tears it into pieces, so does old age overtake a person's body and breaks it down at last. As the chill blast of winter shakes a tree and covers its leaves with dust, so does old age seize the body with a tremor and fill all its limbs with the rust of diseases. The body overtaken by old age becomes as pale and battered as a lotus flower beaten by frost, becomes withered and shattered. Our moonbeams contribute to the growth of Kumuda flowers on the top of the mountain. So does old age produce grey hairs resembling cassia flowers on the heads of men. Death, the lord of all beings, views the grey head of a man as a ripe pumpkin seasoned with the salt of old age and devours it with jest. As the Ganges upsets a neighboring tree by its rabbit core, so old age destroys the body as the current of our life runs fast to decay. Old age preys on the flesh of the human body and takes as much delight in devouring its youthful bloom as a cat does feeding on a mouse. Decre- decrep- Decrepitude raises its ominous hoarse sound of hiccough in the body, like a jackal sending forth her hideous cry in the forest. Old age is an inner flame that consumes the living body like a fat log of wood, which thereupon emits its hissing sounds of hiccough and hard breathing and sends up the gloomy fumes of sorrow and sighs. The body, like a flowering vine, bends down under the pressure of age, turns to grey like the fading leaves of a plant, and becomes as lean and thin as a plant after its flowering time is over. Like an infuriated elephant that can uproot a white plantain tree in a moment, so does old age destroy the body that becomes as white as camphor all over. Senility, O sage, is the standard bearer of the king of death, flapping his fly-whisk of grey hairs before him and bringing an army of diseases and troubles in his train. The monster of old age will even overcome those who were never defeated in wars by their enemies, and those who hide themselves in the inaccessible caverns of the mountain. As infants cannot play in a room that has become cold with snow, so the senses can have no play in a body stricken with age. Old age, like a juggling girl, struts on three legs at the sound of coughing and whiffing, beating like a kettle drum on both sides. The tuft of grey hairs on the head of an aged body represents a fly whisk fastened to the top of a handle of white sandalwood that serves to welcome the despot of death. As hoary age makes his advance like moonlight over the body, he calls forth hidden death to come out of it, as moonlight makes water lilies unfold their buds. Again, as the whitewash of old age whitens the outer body, so debility, diseases, and dangers becomes its inmates in the inner apartment. The extinction of being is preceded by old age, therefore, I, as a man of little understanding, can have no reliance in old age. What then is the good of this miserable life, which lives subject to old age? Senility is irresistible in this world and it defies all efforts to avoid or overcome it. Thus ends chapter 22. We can take Vicissitudes of Time, that is chapter 23. Lord Ram is continuing to speak by their much idle talk, ever doubting skepticism and schism, Men of little understandings are found to fall into grave errors in the spit of the world. Good people have no more confidence in the network of their ribs than little children like fruit reflected in a mirror. Time is a rat that gnaws off the threads of all thoughts that man may entertain about the contemptible pleasures of this world. There is nothing in this world which all devouring time will spare. He devours all things like an undersea fire consumes the overflowing sea. Time is the sovereign lord of all, and equally terrible to all things. He is ever ready to devour all visible beings. Time, as a master of all, spares not even the greatest of us for a moment. He swallows the universe within himself, whence he is known as the universal soul. Time pervades all things, but has no perceptible feature of his own, except that he is imperfectly known by the names of years, ages, and millennia. All that was fair and good and as great as Mount Meru has gone down into the womb of eternity like snakes gorged by the greedy Garuda. There was no one ever so unkind, hard-hearted, cruel, harsh, or miserly whom time has not devoured. Time is ever greedy, even though he devours mountains. This great gourmand is satisfied with gorging himself with everything in all the worlds. Time, like an actor, plays many parts on the stage of the world. He abstracts and kills, produces and devours, and at last destroys everything. Time is constantly picking up the seeds of all four kinds of living beings from this unreal world, like a parrot picks up ripened fruit from under the cracked shell of a pomegranate and nibbles at its seeds. Time uproots all proud living beings in this world. Like a wild elephant uses its tusk to pull up the trees of the forest. This creation of God is like a forest having Brahma for its foundation and its trees full of the great fruits of God. Time commands this creation throughout its length and breadth. Time glides along constantly as a creeping plant, its parts composed of years and ages, and the dark nights like black bees chasing after them. Time, O sage, is the subtlest of all things. It is divided through indivisible. It is consumed, though incombustible. It is perceived, though imperceptible in its nature. Time, like the mind, is strong enough to create and demolish anything in a trice, and its province is equally extensive. Time is a whirlpool to man, and man being accompanied with desire, his insatiable and uncontrollable mistress, and delighting in illicit enjoyments, time makes him do and undo the same thing over and over again. Time is prompted by his rapacity to appropriate everything for himself, from the meanest straw, dust, leaves, and worms to the greatest Indra and mountain Meru itself. Time is the source of all malice and greed, and the spring of all misfortunes, and cause of the intolerable fluctuations of our states. As children play with balls in a playground, so does time play with his own two balls of the sun and moon in his arena of the sky. Upon the end of a kalp age, time will dance about with the bones of the dead hanging like a long chain from his neck to the feet. At the end of a kalp, the gale of desolation rising from the body of this world, destroyer, causes the fragments of Mount Meru to fly about in the air like the rents of the Bhojpatra tree. Time then assumes his terrific form of fire to dissolve the world in empty space, and the gods Brahma and Indra and all others cease to exist. As the sea shows himself in a continued series of waves, rising and falling one after another, so it is time that creates and dissolves the world, and appears to rise and fall with the rotation of days and nights. At end of the world, time plucks the gods and demigods from their great tree of existence like ripe fruit. Time resembles a large sacred fig tree studded with all the worlds as its fruits, resonant with the noise of living beings like the hissing of gnats. Time, accompanied by action as his mate, entertains himself in the garden of the world, blossoming with the moonbeams of the divine spirit. As the high and huge rock supports its body upon the earth, so does time rest itself in endless and interminable eternity. Time assumes to himself various colors of black, white, and red, which serve for his vestures. As the earth supports the great hills that are fixed upon it, so time supports all the innumerable ponderous worlds that constitute the universe. Hundreds of great ages may pass away, yet there is nothing that can move eternity to pity or concern, or stop or expedite his course. It neither sets nor rises. Time is never proud to think that it is he who, without the least sense of pain or labor, brings this world into play and makes it exist. Time is like a reservoir in which the nights are mud, the days lotuses, and the clouds bees. As a covetous man, with worn out broomstick in hand, sweeps over a mountain to gather particles of gold strewn over it, so does time with his sweeping course of days and nights collect all living beings in the world in one mass of the dead. As a miserly man trims and lights a lamp with his own fingers in order to look for his stores in each corner of his rooms, so does light so does time light the lamps of the sun and moon to look for living beings in every nook and corner of the world. As one ripens raw fruit in the sun and fire in order to devour them, so does time ripen men by their sun and fire worship to bring them under his jaws at last. The world is a dilapidated the world is a dilapidated cottage, and men of parts are rare gems in it. Time hides them in the casket of his belly, as a miser keeps his treasure in a coffer. Good men are like a garland of gems, which time puts on his head for a time with fondness, and then tears and temples it down. The strings of days, nights, and stars, resembling beads and bracelets of white and black lotuses, are continually turning around the arm of time. Time looks upon the world like the carcass of ram with its mountains, seas, sky, and earth as its four horns, and the stars as its drops of blood which it drinks day by day. Time destroys youth as the moon shuts the petals of the lotus. It destroys life like a lion kills the elephant. There is nothing so insignificant that time doesn't steal. After sporting for a kalpa period in the act of killing and crushing of all living beings, time comes to lose its own existence and becomes extinct in the eternity of the spirit of spirits. After a short rest and respite, time appears as the creator, preserver, and destroyer of all who resembles all. He shows the shapes of all things, whether good or bad, keeping his own nature beyond the knowledge of all. Thus does time expand and preserve and finally dissolve all things by way of sport. Thus ends the chapter. We may continue to read out the next chapter. Ram continued, time is a self-willed sportsman, like a prince who is inaccessible to dangers and whose powers are unlimited. This world is like a forest and a sporting ground of time where the poor deluded worldlings are caught in his snare like bodies of wounded stags. The ocean of universal deluge is merely a pleasure pond of time, and its undersea fires bursting there are merely lotus flowers. Time makes his breakfast of this vapid and stale earth, flavored with the milk and curd of the seas of those names. His wife Chandi, with her train of Maitris, ranges all about this wide world like a ferocious tigress. The earth with her waters is like a bowl of wine in the hand of time, dressed and flavored with all sorts of lilies and lotuses. In the hand of time, the lion with his huge body and startling mane, his loud roaring and tremendous groans seems like a caged bird of sport. Mahakal, that is transcendent time, like a playful young cuckoo, appears in the figure of the blue autumn sky, warbling as sweet as the notes of a lute of gold. The restless bow of death is found flinging its sorrowful arrows with ceaseless thunder claps on all sides. This world is like a forest in which sorrows range about like playful apes, and time, like a sportive prince in this forest, is now wandering, now walking, now playing, and now killing this game. Thus ends chapter 24th also. But let us take chapter 25, that is play of death. So Lord Ram is continuing to speak for the reasons of his detachment. Basically, that is why this chapter first is this book first is named as detachment. So, what are the reasons of detachment that Lord Ram is reflecting upon all those reasons? We have gone through so many reasons. Now he is talking about play of death. Time stands the foremost of all deceitful players in this world. He acts the double parts of creation and destruction, and of action and fate. The existence of time is known to us only through action and motion, which bind all beings. Fate is that which frustrates the acts of all created beings, like the heat of the sun serves to dissolve a snow pack. This wide world is the stage on which the giddy mob dances about. Time has a third name of a terrifying nature known as Kritant, that is fate, who in the form of a Kapalika dances about in the world. This dancing and loving Kritanta is accompanied by his consort called Destiny, to whom he is greatly attached. Time wears on his bosom of the world the triple white and holy thread composed of the serpent named Anand and the Ganges river, and on his forehead the digit of the moon. The sun and the moon are the golden armlets of time, who holds the mundane world in his palm like the paltry plaything of a flower bouquet. The sky with its stars appears like a garment with colored spots. The clouds called Pushkar and Avrat are like the skirts of that garment, washed by time in the waters of the universe deluge. Before him, his beloved Destiny, with all her arts forever dances to beguile the living who are fond of worldly enjoyments. People hurry up and down to witness the dance of the destiny whose unrestrained motion keeps them at work and causes their repeated births and deaths. People of all worlds are studied like ornaments about her person, and the sky stretching from the heaven of gods to the infernal regions serves for the veil on her head. Her feet are planted in the infernal regions, and the hell pits ring at her feet like trinkets tied by the string of evil deeds and sins. The god Chitragupta has painted her from head to foot with the ornaments marks prepared by her attendants and perfumed with the essence of those deeds. She dances and reels at the nod of her husband at the end of the kalpa, and makes the mountains crack and crash at her footfalls. Behind her dance, the peacocks of the god Kumar and Kal, the god of death, staring with his three wide open eyes, utters his hideous cries. Death dances about in the form of the five-headed Hara, with the loosened braids of her hair upon him, while Destiny, in the form of Gauri, her locks adorned with mandra flowers, keeps her pace with him. In her war dance, this Destiny bears a large gourd representing her big belly, and her body is adorned with hundreds of hollow human skulls jingling like the armed cords of Kapali mendicants. She has filled the sky with the emaciated skeleton of her body and her terrible, destructive figure. The various shapes of skulls of the death adorn her body like a beautiful garland of lotuses. They sway to and fro during her dance at the end of Kalp age. The horrible roaring of the giddy clouds, Pushkar and Avrat, at the end of the Kalp serves to represent the beating of her Damru drum and puts to flight the heavenly choir of Kumbru. As death dances along, the moon appears like his earring, and the moonbeams and stars appear like his crest made of peacock feathers. The snow capped Himalayas appear like a crown of bones in the upper loop of his right ear, and Mount Meru as a golden ring in his left. Under their lobes are suspended the moon and the sun, like pendant earrings glittering over his cheeks. The mountain ranges called the Loka Loka are fastened like chains around his waist. Lightning bolts are the bracelets and armlets of destiny, which move to and fro as she dances along. The clouds are her dressing gown that fly about her in the air. Death is furnished with many weapons like clubs, axes, missiles, spears, shovels, mallets, and sharp swords, all of which are sure weapons of destruction. Mundane enjoyments are no other than long ropes dropped down by the land by the hand of death that keeps all mankind fast bound to the world. He wears the great thread of infinity as his wreath of flowers. Death wears the seven oceans as bracelet belts, bracelets resplendent with the living sea animals and the bright gems contained in their depths. The great voices of customs, the successions of joy and grief, the excess of pride and the darkness of passions form the streaks of hair on his body. After the end of the world, he ceases to dance and creates anew all things, from the lowest animal that lives in the earth to the highest Brahma and Shiva. By turns, Destiny, as an actress, acts her parts of creation and destruction, diversified by scenes of old age, sorrow, and misery. Time repeatedly creates the world and their goods, with the different abodes and localities teeming with population. He forms the movable and immovable substances, establishes customs and again dissolves them, as children make their dolls of clay and break them soon afterwards. Acts of destiny, such being all the destructive conduct of time and others, what confidence, O great sage, can men like me have in them? We will remain here as slaves sold to fate and destiny, and we are deceived by their allurements as beasts of the forest. This fate, whose conduct is so very inhuman, is ever eager to devour all beings. He is constantly throwing man into the seas of troubles. He is moved by his malicious attempts to inflame minds with excessive desires as the fire raises its flames to burn down a house. Destiny, the faithful and obedient wife of fate, is naturally fickle on account of her being a female. She is always bent on mischief and disturbing patience. As the heinous serpent feeds upon the air, so does cruel death ever swallow the living. He ripens the body with old age to create his jest, and then devours all animals warm with life. Death is called a relentless tyrant, having no pity even for the sick and weak, nor any regard for anyone in any state of life. Everyone in this world is fond of affluence and pleasures, not knowing that these are only calculated to lead him to his ruin. Life is very unsteady, death is very cruel, youth is very frail and fickle, and boyhood is full of dullness and unconsciousness. Man is defiled by his worldliness, his friends are ties to the world, his enjoyments are the greatest of his diseases in life, and his greed and ambition are his ever alluring the mirage. Our very senses are our enemies before which even truth appears as falsehood. The mind is the enemy of the mind, and self is the enemy of self. Self esteem is stained, intelligence is blamed for its deception, our actions are attended with bad results, and our pleasures stand only to effeminacy. All our desires are directed to enjoyments. Our love of truth is lost. Our women are the symbols of vice, and all that was once so sweet has become tasteless and vapid. Things that are not real are believed as real. They have become the cause of our pride by hardening us in untruth and keeping us from the light of truth. My mind is at a loss of to think what to do. It regrets its increased appetite for pleasure and for its lack of self denial. My sight is dimmed by the dust of sensuality. The darkness of self esteem prevails over me. I am never able to reach purity of mind, and truth is far away from me. Life has become uncertain, and death is always advancing near. My patience is disturbed, and there is an increased appetite for whatever is false. The mind is soiled by dullness, and the boy's body is filled with overindulgence in eating and is ready to fall. Old age exults over the body, and sins are conspicuous at every step. Youth flies fast away despite all our care to preserve it. The company of the good is at a distance. The light of truth shines from nowhere, and I can have recourse to nothing in this world. The mind is stupefied with itself, and its contentment has fled. There is no rise of enlightened sentiments in it, and meanness makes the mind's advance to enlightened sentiments only more distance. Patience is converted into impatience. Man is subject to the states of birth and death. Good company is rare, but bad company is always within everyone's reach. All individual existences are liable to appear and disappear. All desires are chains to the world, and all worldly beings are constantly seen to be led away to where necessarily no one can tell. What reliance can there be on human life when the points of the compass become indistinct and indiscernible? When countries and places changes their position and names, and when even mountains are liable to be dilapidated? What reliance can there be on man when the heavens are swallowed in infinity, when this world is absorbed in nothingness, and the very earth loses her stability? What reliance can there be on men like ourselves when the very years are liable to be dried up, when the stars are doomed to fade away and disappear, and when the most perfect of beings are liable to dissolution? What reliance can there be on men like us when even the demigods are liable to destruction, when the polar star is known to change its place, and when the immortal gods are doomed to immortality? To mortality. What reliance can there be on men like us when Indra is doomed to be defeated by demons, when even death is hindered from his aim, and when air currents cease to move? What reliance can there be on men like us when the very moon is to vanish within the sky, when the very sun is to be split into pieces, and when fire itself is to become frigid and cold? What reliance can there be on men like us when the very gods, Hari and Brahma, are to be absorbed into the Great One, and when Shiva himself is to be no more? What reliance can there be on men like us when the duration of time comes to be counted, when destiny is destined to her final destiny, and when all emptiness loses itself in an infinity? That which is inaudible, unspeakable, invisible, and unknowable in his real form displays to us these wonderful worlds by some fallacy. No one conscious of himself can disown his subjection to that being that dwells in the hearts of everyone. This sun, the Lord of worlds, is compelled to run over hills, rocks, and fields like an inner piece of stone, hurled down from a mountain and carried away by a current stream. This globe of earth, the seat of all the suras and asuras, surrounded by a luminous sphere like a walnut, is covered by its hard shell, exists under his command. The gods in the heavens, the man on earth, and the serpents in the nether world are brought into existence and led to decay by his will only. Kamdev, who is arbitrarily powerful and has forcibly overpowered the entire living world, derives his unconquerable might from the lords of the world. As the heated elephant regales the air with his spirituous flowing, so does the spring perfume the air with his profusion of flowers, unsettling the minds of men. So are the loose glances of loving maidens directed to inflict deep wounds in the heart of man, which his best efforts are unable to heal. One whose best endeavor is to always do good to the others and who feels for others' sorrows is really intelligent and happy under the influence of his cool judgment. Who can count the numbers of beings resembling the waves of the ocean, and on whom death has been darting the undersea fire of destruction? All mankind is deluded to entrap themselves in the snare of greed and be afflicted with all evils in life, as the deer entangled in the thickets of a jungle. The duration of human life in this world is being decreased in each generation in proportion to the increase of wicked acts. The desire, this may be noted very well. As the wicked acts are increasing, the duration of human life is decreasing in the same proportion. This is a very great fact which is being told. I mean, you may call it a theory right now, but As Lord Ram himself is saying this, so it's a fact, and we should always keep this in our mind. So, the desire of pleasure is as vain as the expectation of reaping fruit from a vine growing in the sky. Yet I know not why men of reason would not understand this truth. This is a day of festivity, a season of joy, and a time of procession. Here are our friends, here are the pleasures, and here are a variety of our entertainments. Thus do men of vacant minds amuse themselves with weaving of webs of their desires until they become extinct. So thus ends the chapter 26, and today's readout session ends here. Shivoham.